She does not lower her voice. She does not whisper. She does not lean sideways or cup her hand over her mouth. She rises from her seat in the first-class cabin, spine rigid, one manicured finger leveled across the aisle like a loaded instrument, and she makes sure every single person in this pressurized metal tube at 35,000 feet of potential can hear exactly what she wants. "I want her removed." The words land in the cabin like something dropped from a great height. 7-year-old Amara Ellison has just clicked her seatbelt into place. The buckle makes a small, clean snap, the last innocent sound this cabin will know for some time. Her small hands rest folded over the fabric of her red dress. Her braids fall neatly against both shoulders, pinned back with white pearl clips that catch the overhead lighting in a way that makes her look, to anyone paying attention, like a child who was dressed with love. She smells faintly of shea butter and the strawberry lip gloss she pressed carefully onto her lips in the back of the car on the way to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. She has done absolutely nothing wrong. She looks up. Not with fear. Not with confusion. Not with the wide, wounded eyes of a child blindsided by cruelty. She looks up the way a person looks up when they have been told something mildly incorrect and are simply waiting for the other person to realize it. The woman pointing at her is Celeste Harlow. 43 years old. Winter wheat hair pulled into a rigid chignon. A navy blazer so precisely pressed it looks architectural. Diamond stud earrings, each stone the size of a pencil eraser, catch the same overhead light that touches Amara's pearl clips, but on Celeste it looks like armor. On Celeste, everything looks like armor. She radiates a particular species of authority, the kind that has never been seriously interrogated. The kind that assumes a room will rearrange itself the moment she enters. The kind that, until this afternoon, has always been right. The first-class cabin of this aircraft holds 14 passengers. Every one of them freezes. A businessman in seat 1A, silver at his temples, black cashmere pullover, the practiced air of someone who travels this route monthly, stops mid-email. His thumb hovers above his phone screen and does not come down. A retired literature professor in 3C lowers her reading glasses from her nose and lets them hang by the gold chain around her neck, eyes tracking the scene with the careful attention of someone who has read this story before and knows exactly how it ends. 2 college students in 4A and 4B exchange a look, the swift, loaded glance of young people who recognize the shape of an injustice even when they cannot yet name it. In the galley, just beyond the curtain, a flight attendant named Kendra Shaw goes very still. Her hand tightens around her clipboard without her realizing it. The jet breathes beneath them all, a low mechanical murmur, the hiss of climate control, the distant percussion of baggage being loaded on the Georgia tarmac outside. The afternoon sky beyond the oval windows is flat and gray, the color of something about to change. No one speaks. In the silence, Celeste's finger remains extended. Aimed. Certain. Amara tilts her head, just slightly, the way a bird tilts its head when it hears an unusual sound. Her braids slide against her shoulder. Her dark eyes hold Celeste's face with a patience that does not belong to someone her age. Or perhaps it does. Perhaps patience like that is exactly what this world manufactures in children who look like Amara, forged slowly, involuntarily, in the heat of 1,000 small moments that add up to one unavoidable lesson: you will be questioned in rooms where you belong. Be ready. She is ready. Her voice, when it comes, is barely above a murmur. But the cabin is so completely silent that it carries like a bell struck in an empty cathedral. That's bad for you. Celeste blinks. The finger wavers, barely, but it wavers. Excuse me? Amara does not look away. Does not rush. Does not fill the silence with anything extra. She simply holds the space open, the way a surgeon holds a cavity, with precision and without apology. Because I own this airline. No one laughs. Not because they believe her. A 7-year-old girl in a red dress with white pearl clips in her braids has just announced majority ownership of a commercial airline, and no rational adult in this cabin believes that is literally true. They do not laugh because something in the delivery stops them cold. Something in the quality of the stillness behind her eyes. Something in the fact that she said it the way you state a fact about the weather, not to impress, not to threaten, not to perform. As though she simply needed Celeste Harlow to have accurate information before making any further decisions. The businessman's thumb comes down slowly. The phone screen tilts toward the aisle. But this moment, this perfect, terrible freeze frame, did not begin here. It did not begin in this cabin, or at this gate, or even in this airport. It began 6 weeks ago in a lawyer's office in Dallas, Texas, where a document was signed that rearranged the invisible architecture of power in ways that would one day make a woman like Celeste Harlow point a finger at a child like Amara Ellison, and lose everything she thought that finger was worth. Rewind. The morning of the flight begins the way most mornings in the Ellison household begin, with precision. Dr. Isaiah Ellison is at the kitchen island by 6:15, reviewing surgical case notes on his tablet while Amara eats oatmeal with blueberries at the breakfast table behind him. Their Buckhead home is quiet in the way that well-ordered spaces are quiet, not empty, but intentional. Warm teak floors that catch the early light. A framed photograph of Tuskegee University above the hallway console table, a gift from a man who is no longer alive to give gifts. A row of Amara's chapter books lined neatly along the kitchen windowsill, spines outward, each one read at least twice, many of them 3 times. Isaiah is 41. 6'2". He moves through rooms the way surgeons learn to move, economically, without wasted motion, alert to everything. He is a cardiovascular surgeon at Emory University Hospital. He has held human hearts in his gloved hands. He has walked into waiting rooms at 2 in the morning and delivered news that permanently divided the people sitting in those chairs into a before and an after. He does not rattle easily. But this morning, something on the kitchen counter has his attention. Beside his coffee mug, to the left, placed there last night so he would not miss it, sits a navy blue envelope trimmed in gold. Thick stock. An embossed seal pressed into the back flap. The kind of envelope that does not arrive in a standard mailbox. It came 3 days ago by private courier. Not to his hospital address. Not to his P.O. box. To this house. Hand-delivered. Signed for by Isaiah himself, at 6:47 on a Wednesday evening while Amara was in the next room doing her reading homework. Secret number 1, Isaiah has not told Amara what the envelope contains. He has only told her they are flying to Washington, D.C., for a few days. She packed her own carry-on bag without being asked, sketchbook, chapter book, 2 granola bars. In that order. She chose the red dress herself. She chose the pearl clips. She stood in front of the mirror for 2 minutes, tilted her head the way she always does when she is thinking, and decided she was ready. At Hartsfield-Jackson, something small and telling happens at the first-class check-in counter. The agent, a young man named Patrick who has worked this desk for 3 years and has processed thousands of boarding passes, sees the name on their tickets and goes briefly, unmistakably still. He looks at Isaiah. He looks at the child beside him. He picks up the phone on his counter and murmurs something at a volume too low to catch, then replaces the receiver within 20 seconds. "Dr. Ellison," he says carefully. "Is there anything we can arrange before you board?" Isaiah shakes his head. That is the arrangement. No announcements. No special escort. No flags on the manifest that would tip off the crew before boarding, or tip off anyone else. Amara notices the exchange. She says nothing. She adjusts the strap of her small leather backpack and looks at the departures board with the calm of someone who has already done their research and found the answers satisfactory. Kendra Shaw is already in position when they board. She stands at the galley curtain in her navy uniform, name badge straight, posture exact, the practiced warmth of someone who has worked first class long enough to read a cabin before a single passenger speaks. When Dr. Ellison and Amara step through the forward door, Kendra's eyes move to them the way a trained eye moves to anything that requires attention, quickly, quietly, without telegraphing anything to the room. She sees the carry-on. The red dress. The pearl clips. She sees the navy envelope inside the backpack's outer mesh pocket, just a gold-trimmed corner of it, visible for only a second before the bag settles against Amara's back. Kendra's expression does not change. But something behind her eyes does. She was briefed 3 days ago by her supervisor. A single paragraph. No details. Just enough to understand that on this flight, on this date, on this particular route from Atlanta to Washington, something was different. Secret number 2, Kendra Shaw knows more about that envelope than she has told anyone on this crew. She knows what it represents. She has known since Wednesday. She has been waiting to see whether it would become relevant. In seat 1A, across the aisle and 1 row forward, the businessman opens his laptop and connects to in-flight Wi-Fi. His name is Marcus Webb. 47. A venture capital partner based in Atlanta who takes this route twice a month. He is not a cruel man. He is not even a particularly unkind man. He is, however, a man who has spent a lifetime learning to look away from things that make him uncomfortable, to study his laptop screen, to check his phone, to give conflict the gift of his absence. Today, he is going to have to make a different choice. He does not know that yet. No one in this cabin knows yet what is about to happen. But something is already in motion. Something that began in Dallas, Texas, in the office of an estate attorney named Gerald Morrow, on the afternoon of the reading of the will of one Horace Beaumont, investor, patriarch, keeper of promises, and the only man alive who fully understood what he was leaving behind. And to whom? Celeste Harlow has never waited in a line she could not move to the front of. This is not a metaphor. This is a documented behavioral pattern observable across every sphere of her adult life. At the school carpool lane, back when she still drove her son to school, before the divorce, before he started asking to live with his father, she idled in the fire lane because she was running late and the fire lane was empty and the rules were clearly designed for people with less going on. At charity galas, she navigated to the head of the auction table before the bidding began, not because she intended to buy everything, but because the front was where important people stood. At restaurants, she did not make reservations. She arrived and expected the room to find a way. It always did. Her skincare brand, Harlow Skin, headquartered in Buckhead, stocked in 42 Sephora locations across the Southeast, was built on this same foundational logic, that confidence, presented correctly, becomes indistinguishable from authority. That if you walk into a room like you own it, the room eventually agrees with you. It has worked for 43 years. She boards the flight at gate C22 after the priority group is called, which she interprets as her group because she is always a priority. She carries one small structured tote, matte black, Italian leather, a brand that does not put its name on the outside because its clients do not need it to, and she sits in seat 2B with the efficiency of someone installing themselves in a space they have already mentally claimed. She does not look at the seat number twice. She does not need to. The first-class cabin of this aircraft is, in Celeste's taxonomy, a social environment with specific rules. The rules are unwritten, which is precisely what makes them important. They operate on the level of implication, of shared understanding between people who recognize each other. The rules are, keep to yourself, take up the appropriate amount of space, do not intrude on the atmosphere with noise or need or visible emotion. First class is not a seat upgrade. It is a signal. It tells the world, specifically, the world contained in this forward section of the aircraft, who you are without requiring you to say it. Celeste is fluent in this signal. She has been speaking it for 20 years. This is why, when she looks up from the process of arranging her tote beneath the seat in front of her, and she sees the child settle into seat 2A across the narrow aisle, the red dress, the braids, the small leather backpack, the father stepping into the overhead compartment with the easy authority of a man accustomed to airline travel, something tightens across the back of Celeste's shoulders. She does not examine the feeling. Celeste Harlow has a long practice of not examining feelings that might, under examination, reveal something unflattering about their origin. She has curated an internal narrative in which she is a self-made woman who earned her seat at every table she sits at, and that narrative has no room for the possibility that some of her comfort depends on other people's absence. She tells herself, this is about atmosphere. She paid for peace. For quiet. For a particular quality of experience that first class exists to provide. She tells herself, this has nothing to do with the child's braids. Or her red dress. Or the color of her skin. She tells herself this the way people tell themselves things they need to be true. Secret number 3, the 2 weeks before this flight, Harlow Skin lost its contract with its largest Southeast retail partner due to what the partner's PR team called misalignment of brand values. The details of the termination are not public yet. Celeste does not know they are about to become very, very public, or that the video recorded on this aircraft in approximately 9 minutes will be the reason why. She smooths the front of her blazer. She looks straight ahead. She has not yet said anything. But the finger is already forming. Isaiah has just lifted their carry-on into the overhead bin when it happens. He has one arm raised. The bin is half shut. He hears Amara's seatbelt click into place behind him, and he is already beginning to turn, already beginning the familiar motion of settling in for a flight he has taken a dozen times, Atlanta to DC, always aisle, always efficient, when the voice cuts across the cabin like something thrown. I want her removed. He stops. The overhead bin hangs open. His arm is still raised. For one full second, Isaiah Ellison, a man who has performed surgery on organs the size of a fist while people's lives hung in the balance, stands completely still in the aisle of a first-class cabin and processes the fact that someone has just demanded his daughter's removal. He turns slowly. Celeste Harlow is standing. She has fully risen from seat 2B, and she is addressing Kendra Shaw, who has appeared at the forward galley curtain with the efficient calm of a professional trained to respond to disruption before it becomes crisis. This is first class, Celeste says. Her voice is measured, precise, the tone she uses in investor meetings when she is declining an offer she finds insulting. I fly Delta One every month. I fly internationally 4 times a year. I have been a premium customer of this airline for 11 years. I paid for a specific quality of experience, and I am asking, politely, that the appropriate arrangement be made. Kendra's clipboard does not move. Her expression does not move. Ma'am. The child has a ticket. The same class of ticket as yours. That's not the point. Then what is the point, ma'am? Celeste's jaw tightens. She does not like being asked to make the point explicit. The entire architecture of her complaint is built on implication, on the understanding that certain people in certain spaces will hear what she means without requiring her to say it. Kendra Shaw is not performing that understanding. Kendra Shaw is asking her, calmly and professionally and in front of 14 other passengers, to say the quiet part. Celeste pivots. I paid for peace and privacy, she says, directing this now at no one in particular, speaking to the concept of the cabin itself. Not this. Not this situation. The implication hangs in the recycled air like something physical. Amara has not moved. She sits with her hands folded in her lap, her red dress smooth, her braids still. She is watching Celeste the way a child watches a puzzle, not with fear, with the careful attention of someone cataloging information for later use. Isaiah steps fully into the aisle. Is there a problem? His voice is quiet. It is the voice he uses in operating rooms when something has gone unexpectedly and panic would be the worst possible response. It is the voice of a man who understands that volume is for people who have no other tools. Celeste turns to him. And here is the thing that Marcus Webb in Seat 1 will describe later, in interviews, in the testimony he never expected to give. She does not answer Isaiah directly. She looks at him for one full second, then she turns back to Kendra, as if Isaiah had not spoken at all. As if his question had not been worth the acoustic effort of a response. Something changes in the cabin. It is not loud. It is not visible. But every person in that forward section feels it, the shift, the slight tectonic movement of a collective moral reckoning that has not yet decided which direction it will fall. Marcus Webb, in 1A, closes his laptop. The literature professor in 3C picks up her glasses by the chain and holds them in her hand without putting them on. The two college students in 4A and 4B look at each other, and then they look at their phones. This is not a daycare, Celeste says finally, still to Kendra, still performing this fiction that Isaiah has not spoken. And I should not have to explain why this cabin has a certain standard that is clearly not being maintained. Kendra takes one measured breath. Ma'am, this cabin's standard is that every passenger with a valid ticket is welcome aboard. Miss Ellison has a valid ticket. Miss Ellison. Celeste repeats it. Not as a question. As something being filed. Isaiah hears her repeat his daughter's name and something moves through him, not rage, because rage is a luxury he learned long ago he cannot afford in public spaces, but the specific, bone-deep exhaustion of a man who has worked his entire life to build a world in which his child would not have to sit still while someone cataloged her as a problem. He had hoped. He had really hoped. The boarding door is still open. The ground crew is completing final checks. There are perhaps 4 minutes before this aircraft is sealed and the question of Celeste Harlow's comfort becomes entirely academic. Amara looks up at her father. He gives her the nod, the small, private one, the one that says, I am here. I am not leaving. You are not alone in this. Amara gives him the smallest nod back. And then she opens her mouth. Amara's first question is so gentle that half the cabin almost misses it. Excuse me, she says. Her voice is unhurried, curious, the voice of a child who has decided that direct inquiry is the most efficient path forward. She is looking at Celeste. Directly. With full, unblinking attention. Did I do something? Celeste blinks. It is such a simple question. Did I do something? 4 words. The kind of question a 7-year-old would ask with absolute sincerity, because 7-year-olds have not yet learned that injustice is often not caused by anything they've done. The kind of question that, when asked in a first-class cabin in front of 14 witnesses, requires an answer. Celeste has no answer. She has complaints. She has implications. She has 11 years of premium membership and a very clear internal sense of how this cabin is supposed to feel. But did the child do something? No. The child clicked her seatbelt. The child folded her hands. The child looked up. That's not the issue, Celeste says. What is the issue? Another simple question. Kendra Shaw, at the galley curtain, watches this exchange with the focused attention of someone watching a very delicate operation. She does not intervene. She is, in this moment, making a professional calculation. This child is doing something Kendra's 37 years of combined life experience recognizes as rare. She is winning without fighting. And the best thing Kendra can do right now is let her. The issue, Celeste begins, and then she stops. Because when she actually prepares to say it, when she constructs the sentence in real time, under the weight of 14 pairs of watching eyes and the faint awareness that at least 2 people in this cabin have their phones oriented toward her, she hears how it sounds. She hears the shape of what she is actually saying. She pivots again. This is not appropriate, she says, switching to a tone of bureaucratic authority that has served her well in board meetings. There are policies for a reason. I'm asking that the crew enforce them. Which policy? Marcus Webb, in 1A, makes a decision. His phone comes up. He is not proud of the hesitation that preceded it. He will say this later, in every interview he gives, that the hesitation is the part that stays with him, the 3 or 4 seconds where he considered just watching and not recording, because he didn't want to be involved, because he had a meeting in D.C., because it was easier. He will say, the question that 7-year-old asked, which policy, was the moment I understood that someone needed to document this, and it wasn't going to be the child. The phone comes up. Others follow. By the time Celeste processes that she is being recorded by 3 separate devices, the moment has already been captured. It already exists. It already lives in the cloud, time-stamped, unedited, waiting. Kendra Shaw straightens. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to ask you to take your seat." "I am not going to take my seat until this is resolved." "Then I'm going to need to contact my captain." The word captain moves through the cabin like a current. Isaiah feels it. He recognizes what it means, that this has crossed the threshold, that the machinery of official response is now engaged, that the next 60 seconds will be consequential. He looks at Amara. She is still sitting with her hands folded. She is still looking at Celeste with that same patient, unreadable attention. But Isaiah notices something he has not seen before. Her right hand, the one closest to her backpack on the empty seat beside her, has moved. It rests now against the bag's outer mesh pocket. Not gripping. Just resting there. The way a person's hand rests near something they may soon need. Secret number 4, inside that mesh pocket, visible only as a corner of thick gold-trimmed navy stock, is the document that will end this confrontation. Amara has known it was there the entire flight. She has been waiting to see whether she needs it. Celeste presses on. "I've been flying premium for over a decade. I know what this airline's standards are. And right now, those standards are not being upheld, and I want it on record that I said so." The literature professor in 3C sets her glasses back on her nose. She has heard enough. "My dear," she says, quietly but clearly, to Celeste, "the only thing on record right now is how you are behaving." Celeste turns to face her. 3 phones track the motion. And then, from behind the closed cockpit door, there is the sound of a latch. The sound of a handle turning. The sound of a door beginning to open. The cockpit door does not fly open. It opens the way important things open, slowly, with weight, with the full awareness of everyone watching. A rectangle of controlled light. Then a hand on the doorframe. Then Captain Raymond Hollis steps into the aisle of the first-class cabin and stands there for a moment, reading the room the way a man reads a room when he already knows what he is going to find. Late 50s. Former United States Air Force. A face shaped by altitude and consequence, not hard, exactly, but settled in the way that faces settle when a person has spent decades making decisions that cannot be unmade. He wears his 4 gold stripes the way he wears everything, without performance. He does not need to announce himself. The stripes do it. The posture does it. The fact that he is standing here at all, outside his cockpit before a single wheel has left the ground, does it. Every phone in the cabin tracks toward him. Celeste turns. For the first time since this confrontation began, something shifts in her expression, not doubt, not yet, but the first hairline fracture of uncertainty. She has dealt with service staff her entire adult life. She has complained to managers, escalated to supervisors, demanded the presence of authority figures in hotel lobbies and airport lounges and restaurant kitchens across the country. Authority figures have always been useful to her. They have always, eventually, sided with the paying customer. "Captain," she begins, her voice recalibrating to the register she uses when she believes she is speaking to someone who can give her what she wants. "I am glad you're here. I have been trying, patiently, calmly, to explain to your crew that this situation is not acceptable and that I..." Captain Hollis does not look at her. He looks at Amara. That single act, the redirection of his gaze, the deliberate choice of where his attention lands first, moves through the cabin like a change in air pressure. Slow. Certain. Irreversible. "Miss Ellison," he says. Not a question. A greeting. Warm, measured, the kind of voice that has talked frightened passengers through turbulence at 39,000 feet. "We are honored to have you aboard today." The silence that follows this sentence is the loudest silence the first-class cabin of this aircraft has ever held. Celeste's mouth opens. Nothing comes out. Amara looks up at Captain Hollis with the same unreadable calm she has maintained since the moment Celeste's finger first rose in the air. She gives him a small, polite nod, the nod of a child who has been taught that grace is not the absence of power but its most refined expression. "Thank you, Captain Hollis." Celeste finds her voice. This is absurd. She is a child. Whatever arrangement someone has made, it is clearly not appropriate for Miss Harlow. The captain says her name without looking at the manifest. He already knows it. He was briefed on this flight 3 days ago and he has known this name since then. He says it the way you say the name of something you have been prepared for. Quietly. Without surprise. You are currently in violation of our passenger conduct policy. Section 4, Paragraph 2, conduct that demeans, threatens, or discriminates against a fellow passenger based on protected characteristics. I did not. The conduct was witnessed by 11 passengers and 2 crew members. It is on record. Celeste's hands come together in front of her, a gesture her body makes when it needs something to hold onto. Her diamond earrings catch the light. Her blazer is still immaculate. But something behind her eyes has cracked open, and through the crack comes a cold, nauseating air, the first breath of consequence. "Do you know who I am?" she says. It is the oldest sentence in the language of entitlement. The sentence that has always worked. The sentence that assumes the answer will be, yes, and that knowledge will change what happens next. Amara answers her. Softly. Without cruelty. With the sad patience of someone delivering news that cannot be delivered any other way. "That's bad for you." Her hand moves to the mesh pocket of her backpack. Her small fingers close around the corner of the navy blue envelope trimmed in gold. She draws it out slowly and holds it upward, not thrusting it, not performing with it, simply offering it the way you offer something to a person who needs to see it in order to understand. Kendra Shaw takes one step forward from the galley curtain. Marcus Webb, in 1A, holds his phone very still. The envelope rests in Amara's hand. The gold trim catches the overhead light. The embossed seal on the flap, the seal of a corporate estate attorney's office in Dallas, Texas, faces upward. Captain Hollis looks at it. He does not need to open it. He has already read its contents 3 days ago in a briefing document sent to him personally by the airline's board of directors. But Celeste Harlow has not read it. And in this moment, in this suspended, breathless beat, the question hanging over this entire cabin is, what is inside that envelope that makes a captain step out of his cockpit, a flight attendant hold her position like a soldier, and a 7-year-old girl sit in her red dress with the quiet confidence of someone who has never, not for 1 second, been in any danger at all? There is a man named Horace Beaumont who most of the world has never heard of. This is how he preferred it. He was born in 1941 in Montgomery, Alabama, the 4th son of a schoolteacher and a man who repaired other people's cars in a yard behind a house that did not belong to them. He put himself through Tuskegee University on work study and a scholarship he applied for 14 times before it was granted. He studied economics. He graduated in 1963, the same year a church in his hometown was bombed and 4 little girls died in the rubble. He carried that knowledge inside him for the rest of his life, the knowledge that the world would not protect you simply because you had done everything right. So he protected himself. Quietly. Methodically. Over 60 years. He invested early in a small regional airline called Apex Air, a carrier that served the Southeast Corridor before its merger with what would become one of the nation's 5 largest commercial airlines. He bought shares in 1979 for a price per unit that would seem, from the vantage point of the present, almost hallucinatory. He never sold. Not when the merger happened. Not when the stock split. Not when his accountant, and then 3 different financial advisors across 4 decades, told him he should diversify. Diversify into what? Horace used to say. Something I trust less? He trusted the airline. He trusted his read of it. He held. When he died 6 weeks ago in a private room at Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas, Texas, Horace Beaumont held the largest single block of majority voting shares in the airline's corporate history. larger than any institutional investor. Larger than the founding family's remaining stake. Larger, by a considerable margin, than any board member had known until the estate attorney's letter arrived. His will was specific. His instructions were clear. His only heir, for a man with no children and no siblings still living, was his goddaughter, Amara Ellison. Horace had known Isaiah's father at Tuskegee. They had been roommates. When Isaiah's father died suddenly of a cardiac event at 54, the kind of death that does not wait for a convenient time, that arrives on a Tuesday morning while a man is making coffee, Horace had stepped in. Not loudly. Not with gestures. He showed up. He stayed present. He watched Isaiah become a surgeon with the quiet pride of a man fulfilling a debt he had chosen to owe. And when Amara was born, Horace held her in the hospital room and made Isaiah a promise. She will have what she needs to belong anywhere she chooses to go. The board had agreed to keep the inheritance private until Amara's 8th birthday, a legal provision Horace himself had structured, to allow Isaiah time to prepare her. The documentation was real. The shares were transferred. The voting rights were active. Captain Hollis had been briefed. Kendra Shaw had been briefed. The gate agent named Patrick had been briefed. What no one had briefed was Celeste Harlow. Isaiah steps forward now and says the word Kendra has been waiting for. Yes, he says quietly, to Kendra's unasked question. That's the document. Kendra nods once. Her clipboard comes down to her side. Marcus Webb, in 1A, lowers his phone to his lap, not because he has stopped recording but because his hand is shaking slightly and he needs to steady it against his knee. He will describe this moment later as the moment the room changed temperature. Not metaphorically. He will say he physically felt it, a drop of several degrees, as though the cabin had passed through a cloud. Celeste looks at the envelope. She looks at the captain. She looks at the child holding the document. You're joking, she whispers. No one laughs. No one speaks. Because in this silence, in this complete, crystalline, suspended silence, Celeste Harlow is finally, irrevocably, hearing what she has been saying. She is hearing the shape of the thing she just aimed a finger at. She is understanding what assumption she walked onto this aircraft carrying, and what it has now cost her. The cost is about to be made official. Captain Hollis does not raise his voice. He never has. In 31 years of commercial flight, 6 years military, 25 civilian, Raymond Hollis has not once found a situation that was improved by volume. Clarity, yes. Precision, always. Volume, never. Ms. Harlow, he says. I am going to ask you to collect your belongings. Kendra will assist you to the forward exit. A member of the ground team will meet you at the jetway and arrange alternative travel. The words are not unkind. They are not delivered with satisfaction or with the relish of a man enjoying a reversal of fortune. They are delivered the way a diagnosis is delivered by a doctor who has learned that the most merciful thing is always the most direct thing. Celeste does not move immediately. She stands in the aisle between row 2 and row 3, navy blazer still immaculate, diamond earrings still catching the light, and she looks around this cabin for something she has always been able to find in rooms like this, an ally. A nod. A face that reflects her own certainty back at her and tells her she is not wrong. She is not the villain here. She is simply a woman with standards in a world that keeps lowering them. There is no such face. The literature professor in 3C has her glasses on and is looking at Celeste over the top of the frames with an expression that belongs in a courtroom. Marcus Webb in 1A is looking at the screen of his phone, not to avoid the moment, but because he is making sure the recording is complete and clear. The college students in 4A and 4B are watching with the open, unself-conscious attention of the young, who have not yet learned to disguise their moral reactions. Even the businessman who boarded late and knows none of these people looks away when Celeste's gaze passes over him. You can't do this, she says. But the sentence comes out smaller than she intended. It comes out like something that was already deflating before she released it. I have rights as a passenger. I am a paying customer and I have not done anything. You have done exactly what was witnessed, documented, and reported, Kendra says. Her voice is steady. Professional. The voice of a woman who has been waiting 30 minutes to say this and has spent every second of that wait making sure she says it correctly. I am sorry that you are uncomfortable, ma'am. Please come with me. Celeste picks up her Italian leather tote from beneath the seat. She does it with the careful, controlled motion of someone trying to preserve the last intact piece of something that has already shattered. Her hands do not shake. Her chin does not drop. These are the trained reflexes of a woman who has spent her entire adult life ensuring that no room, no audience, no circumstance ever witnesses her diminishment. But the room witnesses it now. She walks toward the forward exit without speaking. 4 steps. 5. At the doorframe she stops. She turns once, not fully, just the angle that allows her to see the cabin behind her. And what she sees, for one unguarded second, is not a disruption. Not an inconvenience. Not a problem to be managed or a situation to be resolved. She sees a child. A 7-year-old child in a red dress with white pearl clips in her braids, sitting with her hands folded in her lap, watching the door with eyes that hold no triumph. No gloating. No satisfaction at the reversal. Just the same patient, unreadable calm she has held since the very first second of this encounter. The cabin door closes behind Celeste. For a moment there is nothing. Then, beginning in 1A, spreading backward through the cabin row by row, the applause starts. Not raucous. Not theatrical. The quiet, certain applause of people who witnessed something and want it acknowledged. Amara does not smile. She looks at her father. Isaiah Ellison, cardiovascular surgeon, Harvard Medical School graduate, a man who has spent a lifetime of 14-hour days earning every room he has ever walked into, looks at his daughter and feels something move through him that he will never be able to name to anyone's satisfaction. It is not victory. Victory is too small a word. It is something older and quieter. It is the specific, almost unbearable tenderness of a parent watching a child be exactly who they raised them to be, in exactly the circumstances they always feared would come. He puts his hand over hers. She looks out the window at the gray Georgia sky. The boarding door is sealed. The engines begin their low, building roar. The video goes live at 4:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Marcus Webb posts it from the aircraft before the wheels leave the ground, a 43-second clip, steady, clear, audio intact. He titles it simply, First Class. Atlanta. Today. He adds no caption. He adds no opinion. He has learned, in 47 years of watching the world, that the most powerful stories need the fewest words attached to them. By the time the aircraft reaches cruising altitude, the clip has 40,000 views. By the time it lands at Reagan National, it has 400,000. By midnight, it has crossed 6 million. By the following morning, it is the top trending video across 3 platforms simultaneously. Hashtag First Class Lesson appears in 240,000 posts in 14 hours. News producers are calling Marcus Webb's cell phone, a number he has never made public, before his car leaves the D.C. airport. The reaction is not uniform. Nothing real ever is. There are people who watch the clip and feel something break open in their chests, parents, primarily, who recognize in Amara's stillness every child they have ever watched be questioned in a room where the child belonged, and every moment they wish they had responded differently. There are teachers who share it to their classroom groups. There are black professionals who watch it in silence and do not share anything because there is nothing to say that the clip does not already say more precisely. And there are people who miss the point entirely. Who debate the logistics of the inheritance. Who argue about airline policy. Who write long paragraphs about the complexity of the situation that function as elaborate ways of not looking at the child in the red dress. The internet, as always, contains multitudes. But the dominant current runs one way. It runs toward Amara. Harlow-Skin's social media team works through the night to draft a response and finds that every version they write sounds exactly like what it is: damage control. The brand's largest retail partner, the one whose termination was not yet public, releases a statement confirming the separation. Sponsors send emails. Emails that begin with "pursuant to the morality clause" and end with apologies that are not, in fact, apologies. Celeste Harlow does not issue a statement. 3 days after the flight, Dr. Isaiah Ellison receives a call from a private Washington, D.C. number. The voice on the other end introduces itself as the chair of the airline's board of directors. "We'd like to meet," the voice says. "Not about the incident. About the future." Isaiah is quiet for a moment. "I'll ask Amara," he says. The boardroom is on the 14th floor of a glass building in Washington, D.C., and it has hosted some of the most consequential negotiations in American commercial aviation history. Today it holds 11 adults in expensive chairs and one child in a red dress who has asked for a glass of water and a notepad. The notepad has 3 things written on it in careful, deliberate 7-year-old handwriting. The board chair, a woman named Patricia Gaines, 62, for decades in corporate governance, a woman who has sat across the table from senators and hedge fund managers and never once felt out-prepared, looks at the notepad and feels, for the first time in a very long time, that she is in the presence of someone whose thinking she has not been able to anticipate. "We want to discuss your role going forward, Miss Ellison," Patricia says. "Given the attention, the public conversation, we believe there is an opportunity for meaningful leadership." Amara looks at the notepad. Then she looks at the board. "I don't want a role," she says. 11 adults recalibrate. "What I want," Amara continues, "is a program." She reads from the notepad. 3 items. Written the night before at the kitchen table in Buckhead while her father stood at the island and watched her the way Horace Beaumont once watched him, with the quiet pride of a man witnessing a promise being kept. The first item, a scholarship program, funded by a portion of the share dividends, for children whose parents work in airport and airline service industries, the ground crew, the gate agents, the cleaners, the baggage handlers. The children who have never sat in the front of the plane because the front was not built with them in mind. The second item, mandatory belonging training for all customer-facing staff, not sensitivity training, which she calls too soft, but belonging training. The difference, she explains, is intention. Sensitivity asks people to be careful. Belonging asks people to be responsible. The third item is 1 sentence. Every child with a valid ticket belongs in any seat they paid for. 11 adults are silent. Patricia Gaines looks at Isaiah Ellison. Isaiah Ellison looks at his daughter. Amara Ellison picks up her glass of water and waits. She has been waiting her whole life. She is 7 years old. And she is just getting started.